In the few minutes that I've been given, I'm going to look at democracy and human rights, and I'm going to look at civil society and democratic consolidation, and I'm going to end with the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament's mandate, and how do we locate the role of civil society within that. It is indisputable that democracy and civil society are intrinsically intertwined. Democracy without the pulsating lifeblood of civil society is but a hollow shell. Without the indomitable spirit of human rights, on what anchor does democracy stand? The intricate dance between democracy and human rights is nothing short of a symbiotic relationship, each profoundly dependent on the other, each providing sustenance to the other. They are just not interconnected, but they are mutually constitutive and inseparable in their essence. Consider this, if you will, the defining characteristics of democracy. Can it truly be defined without the cornerstone of human rights? The answer is a resounding no. Human rights, in its turn, can only find robust protection cannot find robust protection without the embrace of a democratic state. A functional democracy, it is more than a political state. It is a harmonious symphony of diversity, a champion of equality, and a steadfast keeper of individual freedoms. It is our most potent defense against the tyrants of a few and the guardrails against concentration of power, which almost inevitably can lead to human rights violations. Let us not forget that the mightiest fortress safeguarding human rights is built not with bricks and mortar, but with the bedrock principles of a sustainable democratic framework, one that is deeply rooted in the rule of law. Political and civil rights like freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association can only thrive in an environment and a culture that is democratic, and not within civic spaces that is stifled, as we see in countries like Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Swaziland. Now, moving on to civil society and democratic consolidation. When we speak of democratic consolidation, we cannot ignore the indispensable role played by civil society. Indeed, the contribution of local and international civil society organizations to the deepening of democracy across Africa has not only captured our attention, but they've also captured the attention of the world. The active role of these organizations in our current democratic dispensation stretches across the vast expanses of the African continent. Yet this involvement brings with it certain concerns, particularly the need for civic education and the imperative of political socialization. The effectiveness of civil society organizations in these areas will inevitably impact the process of democratization, either positively or negatively, especially its consolidation within a democratic system, not least in developing socio-political environment like our continent. Unfortunately, much of our discourse has centered around democratization, with only a few voices having underscored the importance of consolidation. During the era of colonialism, civil society organizations were a formidable force. They were the heartbeat of the struggle for independence, collaborating with citizen-led movements to fight colonial governments, to advocate for human rights, and championing better treatment for people. In essence, civil society was proactive and held a substantial influence, playing a critical role in Africa. And you can think about various movements that have led to independence in Africa, particularly in this region. Following independence, the onus has fallen on civil society to redouble their efforts in ensuring the realization of the promises of new democracies for every individual. Are reflected in daily experiences of our citizens. However, the relentless cycle of poverty hampers citizen participation, creating a landscape of uneven development and wealth distribution. This is just a showroom. This in turn clears the path for the rise of authoritarian populists who pose a threat to the progress made in many African young democracies. Indeed, we have witnessed how authoritarian figures have emerged post-independence, shrinking civil society space to exert their influence. Civil society organizations opposing authoritarian regimes in several countries are systematically suppressed, which serves to weaken civil society activism. Even in similarly democratic states, like the country that I come from, South Africa, countries like Namibia, civil society organizations struggle for the same level of freedom and popularity they once enjoyed during colonial times. Media outlets are largely reliant on government funding and resources, while pressure groups often lack resources, necessary resources to hold government accountable, to advocate for human rights, and to maintain checks and balances. Let us be clear. The consolidation of democracy in Southern Africa, particularly in countries like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Swaziland, Namibia, and of course South Africa, is reliant on an active involvement of a vibrant and a well-supported civil society. Thus, the struggle for democracy does not end with the attainment of independence. It is a continuous journey, and on this journey, civil society should remain our steadfast companion. It's crucial that we collectively ensure that the sun of democracy does not set on our beloved continent, and I am going to repeat that. It is crucial that as a collective, we ensure that the sun of democracy does not set on our beloved continent. Of course, one may argue that I'm making this a rosy story about civil society. And as I've mentioned, besides the shrinking of civic space that we see in our region, civil society